How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited about this film. It has taken quite a while to find the finished form of it, and I really feel confident that I have. And just the other day, I looked at the finished print of it with a brand new sound mix that I did, and I'm really pleased with the way it came together. It's lean. It's having started shooting this film, I believe in 2007 or 2009.
Wow. Yeah.
You can imagine the amount of footage that I have, and to glean it so that I only took the stuff that I felt was the most real and the most powerful. I feel like I did that, and that was the editing. Actually, was the toughest part of this whole movie.
Right. Was
finding a shape for it, finding a form, and then structuring it. So I'm excited. There'll be 200 people sitting watching this movie.
Right. At the IFC Center.
At the IFC
on
June 19th. At 7:30, and Steve Buscemi is going to introduce the film and do a Q&A with me. So that's great. I just sent him the film, and he just wrote me back the most amazing email in which he was talking about how much he was moved and impressed by the film, and it was completely unsolicited. I didn't ask him for that, and it meant so much to me. I mean, he kind of implied that he thought it was one of my best movies. Which, listen, whether I agree or I don't agree, it's hard to say whether I do or I don't without sounding somewhat self-involved, right? But there was a reason why I continued to work on this movie for over 8 years. It's because I believed in it, and it was very encouraging to hear Steve access what it was that I was trying to do with the film. Effortlessly. So.
Well, maybe at some point I'll have an opportunity to bring him on and ask him directly. I hadn't seen Down in Shadowland, which is the film we've been talking about. Before I met you, I saw it literally, I think, the night before we sat down,
right?
And which was, I guess, one of your somewhat earlier draft of the film.
Yeah, so it has changed quite a bit since then.
Yeah, and I've seen one since. I wonder if it's changed since, because at one point you sent me a disc or gave me one with a more, a newer edit,
right?
And a more updated edit, which I could see, this guy's putting a lot of work into this film.
Yeah.
But just based also on your earlier films, I just felt this is somebody I can relate to, at least in terms of his artistic vision. I got that from your earlier films. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah. So, in all this time, though, and I know you have had going through, obviously a lot of personal stuff has been going on the last couple of years.
Right.
That's probably taken up a lot of your time. Has this been, in a way, has it been for you, this film, without sounding cliche? But has it been a help to lean on this work in a way? And
that's a really good question, Adam. One of the real privileges and advantages of doing something on your own is that you can work on it whenever you want to. And I shot this film myself. I edited it right here. Most of the music that's in it that I composed right here. And so, literally, at 10 o'clock at night, if I felt like, going back in and tweaking and relooking and working on a section, reworking it, I could do it. And there is something really freeing about that. I've often felt that in some of my, financed films, that the structure of, when you shoot, the structure of when you edit,
everything.
It's like, one film sort of squeaked through where I feel like everything that I wanted to put in it is in it, and that was Living in Oblivion. Because in a way, I think only one scene ended up not in the movie.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's yes. Quite a...
It is. But so...
That's amazing, actually.
I mean, what I loved about this project was that it started out as it started out on the shot level. In other words, I'd be sitting on the train, and I'd see something happening, and I go, wow, I wish I had my camera. Now, not a still camera, although a still photographer really influenced me. Gary Winograd, he's a black and white photographer.
Street photographer? Was
yeah.
he?
He was in the 60s. I have his book over here. I'll show you.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to see it. Mm-hmm.
But he captured these moments of just human interaction or people being alone that just spoke volumes, And I said to myself, I wonder if I could do that with the movie camera, And so I started shooting, and I got some amazing footage, But then the question, of course, became, well, how do you put it all together? What? As interesting as some of these shots were, the idea of somebody just sitting there staring at shot after shot was daunting, because who would want to do that? I wouldn't want to do that, But just the fact that I could go out and shoot whenever I wanted to shoot, whatever I wanted to shoot, was, I don't know, it enabled me to discover a form of filmmaking that felt very real to me, which was I get a bunch of broad strokes, all these shots that I shot. Then I could look at it. It's almost like, poetry, and you say, okay, do these words go together? What's the emotion that comes from these 3 shots going together?
Right.
Okay, then you take those 3 shots and you put 20 shots together, and you have kind of a scene, and you go, okay, what's that telling me? Where's that going? And I was kind of writing the film as I was shooting and editing, and hopefully, the next film won't take 9 years, but I feel that,
I hope so too.
I feel that the work that went into it is very evident in the film, and it's like looking at a piece of architecture or something. You look at Notre Dame. I'm not comparing my film to Notre Dame, but I'm saying,
yeah, it's much better.
Well,
I know what you're saying.
You look at the centuries of work that went into building the cathedral, and you have to stand back and have some awe about it.
Yeah. I mean? Well, could you have made any other kind of film project would have been competing for a lot of your time and in your energy,
right.
in the last couple of years anyway, maybe
That's true.
Maybe a few years. Did you get to see this work? Did you get to see it?
Yeah, she did. Mm-hmm. She did. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, you're referring to the fact that my wife passed away in October, and it was intense. It still is. She had a 2-year battle with leukemia, and I stopped everything just to take care of her. I don't regret a second of it, I think about her constantly. And, she saw what I was doing, and always a little like, since it wasn't a financed film, I was paying for it. She had a little bit of anxiety about what the hell I was doing. And,
Are you going to be okay?
Well, also, how much was I going to spend?
Yeah.
Right.
It could be a sinkhole or whatever you want to call it.
But she liked it. She liked it a lot. I mean, it's a very personal film. And I just say to myself, especially today, the only thing that matters really is that it's something that is truly meaningful to you. That's it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that it's a piece of work that is only meaningful to me, because if I felt that, I never would have made it. Mm-hmm. As an artist, I think I'm able to discern and to tell, okay, this is just something for me. Mm-hmm. Or, and to always know that, well, I do think audiences would appreciate this. And I put a lot of thought into keeping that in mind.
The photographer you mentioned, Gary
Winograd. Right.
Winograd. He was obviously was an inspiration. Was there anything else? Because I every other step of the way, it seems like you've been doing this alone. Even I'm letting myself edit here. Even like later, even your essentially your exhibition phase, you've been doing on your own.
Right.
But maybe for that stage, as this was forming in your mind, as it was percolating, you were open to other things other than that.
Yeah, I mean, the early sort of, I wouldn't even call them documentaries. And in fact, to use the word documentary about this film is not.
It's a work of nonfiction, but it's not
exactly
technically.
I can't quite figure out what the word is. I call it hybrid
essay film or whatever. People are always looking for that, right? That's potentially the most challenging thing. Is a lot of programmers don't want to struggle for that because they figure that their audience needs to get it immediately what they're looking at. Yeah. And you can't always do that.
No.
And then you're cheating the audience essentially too, because
you're right, because you're not giving them the chance to discover new things.
You know?
Well, that's a very interesting observation, Adam, because I was surprised, but I won't mention the festival, the film got accepted into the competition there. You know, they didn't have like an experimental section; they had a documentary section and a fiction section. So it was accepted into the documentary section. I found out from someone who was on the jury that the head of the jury instructed everybody on the jury not to vote for my film for anything because it was, quote, not a documentary. And I just was like, when I heard that, first of all, I had to laugh a little bit, you know, because it just shows you that pomposity and elitism, right? Aesthetic elitism exists in every aspect of the filmmaking business, not just Hollywood. You know, the independent business is.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. It's clubby
it's just as exclusive and close-minded, and it's like, what the fuck? Just why call it anything? Just watch the movie.
The head of the jury is at odds with the programmers because they decided that your film was a documentary for the purposes of this particular in terms of programming it. So then, you know, why should this guy mutinize?
I agree.
You know, and do that. That's
I know. Why not let them make up their minds?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But certainly the early films of Herzog, some of his, because I wouldn't really call them documentaries. He did a film called Fata Morgana. Mm-hmm. He did a film about a sculptor who was also a ski jumper called the Ecstasy of the Sculptor Steiner, and it has the most amazing slow motion footage.
Oh yeah,
have you seen it?
You're right. Crashes gets really injured though, or doesn't he?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't get injured
because he was the first one that learned how to basically
ski flying.
So he learned how they redesigned. There was a certain point where they were paralleling. And then later on they learned in order to avoid accidents that they had to kind of cross their skis, and there was a different design and things like that. But I remember that work, and in fact, I just saw Herzog. He was in Brooklyn about a month ago. Did you hear about that? Where he's at Pratt?
I heard about it. Yeah.
Even though it was free, you had to RSVP and get a ticket. Somebody gave me a ticket, so I went, and they showed the clip from that film. Film.
Cool.
Yeah. But continue. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, his films were about a subject that then elevated it, or kind of even went deeper into it to such a degree that it became a little surreal, and
for sure,
you entered another level of awareness, and that's what I was attempting to do with this film. I mean, it's most assuredly not a documentary about the subway. It's all shot on the subway, but it's a journey. It's like this idea of how he even came up with the title is that I began to really see that it's like an alternate universe down there, you know. And on one level, you can just say it's people sitting on the train. Mm-hmm. On another level, it's quite different, especially when you consider the fact that it's probably the largest subway system in the world, I think.
Yeah.
And the numbers of people...
Unless there's something in China that we don't know about.
The numbers of people that use it are just so astounding. And so that when people enter the system, they almost become, or feel that they become, invisible because there's so much humanity around them. Well, and so thinking that they're invisible, I've noticed that people actually reveal things because they think no one can see them. Right, and so those were the moments that I was after, and it became like it's almost like this was a flip side to the world that's above ground, you know, something that's a little more meaningful, a little bit more resonant, and that was the structure that I gave the film.
It's interesting. this alternative existence underground. It's sort of a whole other set of rules in a way,
it's almost like being in outer space or underwater.
Yeah.
Because everybody's in these little capsules.
Right.
That are just hurtling through darkness.
Right, exactly.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you're in these little self-contained little bubbles of light.
Right.
That move.
And we try desperately to normalize that experience too, whether it's looking at your phone now, as everybody does if you look around. That's another film. Mm-hmm. Where did the title come from? Or do you just remember
I just sort of came up with the words. I wanted something that...
Because I know a song that's called that.
Oh, really? I
think so. I think so, unless I'm mistaken. You already said that as you were making it, were understanding what you were doing, and it was taking shape in your mind and maybe in your editing and et cetera, that you felt there was definitely an audience for it and that people would be able to relate to it. Were you thinking about whomever those people looked like, or that number of people? Because you've run, it's obviously the biggest challenge for any filmmaker, let alone somebody who's doing something that you could call experimental, or where you really isolate yourself from those commercial considerations. Almost entirely. I understand you do feel like people can relate to it, and I absolutely agree with you. But how has it been for somebody who's been making more on the surface commercial types of fare? Well, I mean, one could argue that there's been a couple of...
That's a really good question, and I have to tell you that there's no difference, honestly, because every one of my films, I have faced the most just astounding challenges to just get them in front of people.
Right.
So this isn't new to me. In some ways, it's a relief to not have to worry about...
all the people that you're disappointing or frustrating because...
Or let's say a distributor had paid, advance of $1 million, and now I have to worry about opening weekend, and reviews and all that shit. I don't have to worry about it. And listen, it just feels good to have made something that I'm proud of and that I feel has meaning, and it's I don't expect it to get mass audiences, but I do think that it's a highly entertaining film. The one thing that I will say is that I made a conscious effort to keep it always like what's going to happen next. Once you lose that in a movie, I don't care what it is, when the audience doesn't give a shit what happens next, or they feel like whatever happens next they don't care about, right? You're gone. The movie's gone. I mean it, and it's a crucial element. It's not like action. It's not like, it's just the sense that the film is proceeding towards something, and the element of surprise is still possible. And I tried to work that into this movie. But yeah, IFC, we tried to get, more than one night. I appreciate that, but I do think the film could have had a week run there, and it may still somewhere. Mm-hmm. When we see what sort of reactions people have. But I mean, here it is. It's just under a month away from the screening, and it's almost sold out with no advertising whatsoever. So that's
word of mouth.
Yeah.
There's no doubt you could have had a good, and also I think, frankly, I mean, I talk about this all the time. People probably that listen to this are bored out of their mind hearing me say this, but I don't necessarily think there are very many films that need a full week theatrical. By and large, you have a theater, they need to screen films, I suppose, and they need to figure out a schedule where each weekend, which is when they get 90%, I'm sure, of their business is on the weekend. There's almost no film anymore where I can't go on the second weekend and know that I could just roll up and see any movie I want, because by the second weekend, almost every film is already
gone.
Yeah, if it's still around for a second week, it's at like a much smaller capacity, audience-wise. So I always feel like, man, if there was a way where you could just have a weekend theatricals. That to me makes most sense. And when I say weekend, I just mean Friday and Saturday.
Uh-huh.
I mean Sunday, I guess too, it could be, but not by Sunday night. You're done because nobody's going to the movies. I mean, when I say nobody, very few people are going to the movies on Sunday night, let alone Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. It's just so quiet. You ever go to a movie on a Wednesday afternoon in any theater? No. Nobody else does either. Tom. I mean, they just don't. So the theaters are sitting there more or less empty most of the week. I mean, with very few exceptions. You know, the system is kind of broken. I don't know how a lot of these theaters, I guess they can do things like play your movie on a Monday night because the audiences aren't going to be showing up in droves for the other films that are there for the week. So I think that this definitely could have used, I think, a good, strong weekend. And if you could somehow manage to change it so that, you know, you get your reviews for just a weekend, even a weekend, which screenings, I think that would be great. And you absolutely would get a review if it were okay to review films that are just playing for a weekend, because you have such an impressive track record. So that's my thought. I feel like a big part of the theatrical exhibition system is kind of broken.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. You know, which ties into the whole, you know, critical
exactly
connection too.
Right. Sure, of course.
But you know, that's the system. It is and you know, listen, you know, Adam, I'm glad I made a film that was outside the system. I really, you know, the fact that I don't have to worry about reviews, I just, you know,
liberating.
It's liberating. It's also, I think, more natural. It's more. It's more.
It is organic.
It's more organic.
It is, because these things like reviews shouldn't affect anything.
Right. They should. Exactly.
Word of mouth is.
It should be review should be an afterthought, if that.
Yeah.
You know, because you know, the only thing that matters is to you know, listen. Let's not get too, you know, artsy fartsy here, but
where else are we going to get artsy fartsy if not
I'm
here?
just saying, you know, if you want to be in the film business, you have to realize
it's a business.
It's a business, and it takes a lot of money on all aspects of it. You know, you might be able to make a film cheaply now, but nonetheless, to get it out into the world still costs money.
Right.
If someone is going to spend money, it's common sense. They're not going to do that unless they know they're going to get their money back, which influences what they accept to release and how they release it. You know, and it's a strange cycle, but it just seems to me that I recall films. I mean, I'll tell you something that's really encouraging. That Moonlight won Best Picture. I mean, that is like incomprehensible to me. Considering, right? But considering that Rocky won Best Picture. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
I don't care what anybody says. Rocky is a stupid movie. You know,
it's you're talking about 40 years ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rocky,
which you know spawns Creed.
Won
you
Best
know,
Picture. Okay, that's all right. I'm not being elitist. I'm just saying.
But that was an independent film too.
I know it, but still, look at it.
And it was opposite Network and Taxi Driver, by the way.
I know that. Yes.
Right? Wasn't Network the same year?
That's astounding. But the fact that Moonlight won, that is encouraging, because I really liked that film, and I thought it was a really, really brave and difficult film. I mean,
which one?
Moonlight.
Oh, Moonlight. Yeah, very true. Yeah, I agree with you. It was really very, very moving, and that it could, you know, win Best Picture or almost not win Best Picture, but then win Best Picture.
Right. Listen, I plan to get back into the fray, because that's what it is. It's a fray.
It's a fray.
What I mean by that is you gotta accept the fact that you have to push and shove and kind of get attention and try to get attention. Accept it that's part of what the business is.
Yeah.
You know, you cannot be an independent filmmaker today and just sit back and wait for it to happen. It'll you know. You have to fight, and you know, I wanted to get this one out of my system. You know, I may make another one like this, but just doing it all on my own was completely exhilarating. And you know, I have several ideas for scripts that involve actors, you know, narratives, but doing this movie has shown me that if it came down to it, I would rather take my little camera, hire unknowns. and just make the film exactly the way I want to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And time after time, that has proven to be true. Again, let's just talk about Moonlight. Who's in that movie?
No,
Nobody.
there were no stars in it. I mean, I guess.
But still,
the actor Mahershala, the one who played, the drug dealer, the father figure in the first act.
But still, what
he's pretty famous because he's on House of Cards.
Yes, but come on,
but there weren't any big star name above the title type of name, in that film.
I can't.
It couldn't have cost very much.
Adam, what it's been like on every single movie that I've made, just trying to get the financing.
I remember you just telling me, and it's what I hear also from your colleagues.
Well, even in my very first film, Johnny Suede, I met this young unknown actor who had come in to audition for me. This was my first film.
Yep.
We had looked and could not find someone to play this part because either they just were too stupid or they didn't get it that there was a vulnerability to this character. And my casting director said to me, "There's this young guy coming in today. When you look at his resume, don't be freaked out.
Judgmental about him because he's
got
nothing.
He's got one little tiny Canadian TV series on it, and this movie that's just finished shooting that nobody has seen, called Thelma and Louise." I looked at his picture. I said, "He looks interesting. Bring him in."
Mm-hmm.
The second I saw Brad Pitt walk in, I said two things: A, this is my guy. This is Johnny Suede, and B, this guy's going to be a star. All right, I cast him. I called the agent. Yep, you're cast. My producer goes, whoa. What are you talking about? You're not casting that guy. I said, what? This was like a $500,000 movie in 1991. He goes, I'm not paying for that guy. He's nobody. He refused to compromise in any way. I had to turn my back on this guy's money.
Really?
Yes, I did. That's how confident I was that Brad was the guy. You know how long it took me to get $500,000? It took 4 years.
Wow.
I walked away from it. And fortunately, I stumbled into another deal 2 weeks later.
Wow. But you didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Obviously.
But, I had kept this one woman sort of aware of what was happening. And still there was no guarantee that she...
Did Brad Pitt know what you did? Yeah, that would have been kind of foolish. Unfortunately, it turned out well for you in every way. And it's a terrific movie if you haven't seen it.
So it's just like when you fight those battles, it's like, I don't know. It's, every movie that I've ever seen that's really meant something to me has had basically, people doing parts that they either normally would never do, right? Like Midnight Cowboy. They almost didn't cast Jon Voight in that part. And, he's astonishing in it.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle. I would love to make a movie completely the way I want to make it, and yet still have it get seen by a lot of audience.
Yeah. Wow. Write that down. Let's see. Get that. Where you have complete control. I think it is what you want. Or
I'm dealing with people, or I'm dealing with a company that isn't so myopic and just stupid in terms of what they think marketability is.
Yeah, there's so many distributors, but I don't know how many are willing to really step out, and take a real artistic risk. Like they probably just look like it. The bottom line, they can't really afford too many missteps in the kinds of films they choose. I mean, I don't know. Was it different in 1991 and 1993?
It was a little different because everyone still had this thought. The distributors had since it was still such a wide open game that they figured that one of the hit films might hit. That since it happened with a couple of films, it happened.
Yeah, and you were talking about like Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Reservoir Dogs.
Well, this was. Yeah, before Reservoir Dogs, I think Stranger Than Paradise.
That
became the next sort of like thing for people to look up to.
Well, you shot that.
I did shoot that. Yes,
coincidentally.
Yes, but the thing that changed all that was Pulp Fiction, which set the bar to a ridiculously high.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the end. That was the Jaws of the independent world. Yeah,
it was.
Or the Rocky.
So. but it was different. I mean, there was definitely a sense that that if you got the film made, which was a miracle, and you got a distributor, well, there was never any question. Once you got a distributor, let's say in 1991, 1995, there was never any question that the film wasn't going to get a theatrical release.
Right. Yeah.
There were no other options.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
that was such a great feeling.
Yeah.
Knowing that even if it played for a week or whatever, you were going to get a beautiful theatrical release. And I still just believe that the theater going experience is a valuable experience.
Sure.
Now.
Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of other people feel that way too. I mean, there's no shortage of theaters, and they're being built. They're not.
Right.
They're adding theaters to the city. This one. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So, I'm sure I've already talked to you about that, the Metrograph and all these other theaters that, that are playing films like this.
Mm-hmm.
How did you originally meet Buscemi then? How did that happen? I know he was a downtown guy who, you probably just ran in the same circles, right? Living in...
I knew who he was. I mean, one of the most fascinating things about being on the Lower East Side at that time, I'm talking about... I first moved to the city in 1976.
The year Rocky came out, by the way. Where were you living before?
I had just gotten my bachelor's degree in creative writing from Old Dominion University in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
And I got accepted to NYU Film School, the graduate film school. So I decided to come up here.
Well, where were you? Where do I know where you're from? I'm trying to remember.
My dad was in the Marine Corps, so I was moving around every 2 years. But at that point, I had just finished 4 years in Virginia at a small college in Norfolk, Virginia. But what I was going to say is I would walk to school, from my loft in Tribeca to East 3rd Street. Everything that you saw on the streets was all done by posters and like handbills. You'd see new bands. You'd see theater groups. You'd see, all this stuff on lampposts everywhere. And one of the things that kept appearing was Steve Buscemi with his partner, Mark Boone Jr., right? Going to be performing midnight at the Limbo Lounge or
midnight,
at the Mud Club. And so I went to see him a couple times because I knew him through Jim. I think the first film that Steve did with Jarmusch was Mystery Train. But I went to go see Steve, and he did this most amazing play in which there was hardly any dialogue at all for the first 45 minutes. It's just two guys, him and his Mark Boone Jr., on these little cots. And they kind of walk around sniffing each other and kind of pushing each other and curling up and trying to go to sleep. And after about 35 minutes, one of them says, "Okay, now listen, this time I'll be the male dog, you be the female dog." They were like dogs for 30 minutes. It was so brilliant.
Yeah.
And,
you could do it. It was part of a whole,
Yes.
There was a process of experimenting. It wasn't like, here's this one thing, it's got to be a commercial success.
Right.
It's just like, this one, if it doesn't work, we'll go to the next thing.
But it was still entertaining as hell. It was hilarious and kind of spooky and with a real sort of surprise at the end. And we just became friends. At one point, I had spoken to him because I had originated Johnny Suede as a one-man show that I performed, right? And when I turned it into a screenplay, I loved Steve, and I thought about him playing, in the movie with me.
Yeah.
But all of that quickly changed when I realized that I didn't really feel comfortable directing the film and acting in it for my first film, So anyway, but I put him in Living in Oblivion, and that my admiration and love for him just skyrocketed. He is absolutely an anomaly in terms of an actor. I don't think I've ever met another actor who is so completely selfless, but yet brings his entire self. Now, do you know what I mean by that? Most actors, and I'm not being critical, okay? You have to hear me on this. Most actors are so self-obsessed that all they can think about is themselves. And in fact, there's a really basic acting exercise developed by Sanford Meisner called the Meisner Technique, in which all it is two people just sitting and looking at each other. And it's to develop the actor's, awareness of taking attention off of himself and putting it on the other actor. In other words, the other actor forces him to act. It's not just the actor acting by himself.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Buscemi, I never made one suggestion to him that he looked at me and said, "Fuck you, I'm not doing that." He either smiled. Most of the time what he did was he would just kind of smile, and I would always take the actors aside and I just whisper to them. I don't make broad announcements that everyone can hear. I whispered to the actors, and I whispered something to him, just a little thought, and his eyes just lit up.
Mm-hmm.
I went back, sat by the camera, action, and then you just watch him take off, and it's he flies, he goes wherever he wants to, but yet it's always within the realm of the film, which is another rarity. A lot of people give you their gifts, their acting gifts, but it doesn't always go with what the story is in some way, And he's turned into a great friend. I think he's a really, really great filmmaker as well, and I love the guy.
And he'll be there on June 19th to moderate the Q&A. That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yes.
It's nice to be on the other end of this thing. Yeah. Is there in your New York premiere, I think it was? Was Woodstock your New York premiere?
Well, out of state.
What?
Out of state New York. Here's the Gary Winograd.
Oh, yeah. I want to take a quick look at it. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love street photographers, and look at that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, especially this one. She's beautiful. Look how beautiful she is.
But
look at that. Isn't that beautiful?
Through some of these things.
I'm going to.
Like, these little moments. Of,
right.
They become surreal. Like this is a famous picture.
Is it? Oh yeah. I know. Yeah.
But I tried to take that idea and use it with the moving image.
This is nice.
I know.
I'm looking at I'm looking at a woman from in the pool under the surface, swimming with a pig, a piglet or a small pig. It's really funny. This is a great book. It's been great. Thank you. It's been nice to see you.